If you think the next phase of this war is only about missiles flying across the sky, you are already behind the story. The bigger danger right now is not just what explodes, it is what slows down, what gets delayed, what gets rerouted, what gets burned through faster than it can be replaced, what keeps moving on paper but under the surface is taking more strain than leaders want to admit. And if that is where this war is going, then the real battlefield is no longer just the border, the airspace, or the launch sites. It is logistics, it is supply, it is endurance. And that is exactly why this moment matters so much. Because armies do not fail only when they lose battles. Sometimes they fail when the pressure on the system behind the battlefield starts getting heavier every day, even while the official message stays calm. Now let's be clear right from the start. I could not verify the claim that Iran cut 90% of IDF supply routes. I could not verify that 120,000 troops are starving. I could not verify that Israel's army is collapsing in 5 days. Those are the kinds of viral claims that sound dramatic, but go far beyond the reliable reporting. What the reporting does show is something different, and in some ways more serious. This war is increasingly becoming a contest of pressure, resupply, and strategic strain. Shipping routes have been disrupted, peace talks have stalled, oil markets have reacted, and Hezbollah has kept Israel tied down on the Lebanon front while hostilities continue despite the ceasefire. That is the real story. And if you understand that story, you understand why Israel could face a dangerous test even without the cartoon version of sudden total collapse. Because modern war is not just about who can strike, it is about who can keep operating, who can keep moving ammunition, who can keep rotating forces, who can keep defenses supplied, who can keep commanders making choices from strength instead of urgency, who can keep a military machine functioning while the entire region is trying to make that function more expensive, more stressful, and more uncertain. That is where Iran's strategy starts to make more sense. Iran may not need to cut every road, every convoy, every depot, or every military route to create serious problems for Israel. It only needs to help turn this conflict into a long, exhausting systems contest. And the evidence we do have points to exactly that kind of pressure. Reuters reported that shipping chaos tied to the war is lifting logistics profits in Europe while clouding outlooks because routes and costs have been disrupted. Reuters also reported that peace talks have stalled and shipments through the Strait of Hormuz remain limited, keeping global supply pressure elevated. And once supply pressure becomes part of the war, everything changes. Because an army can look powerful in public and still be under growing private strain. The public sees airstrikes, the public sees missile interceptions, the public sees leaders giving confident statements. What the public usually does not see is the burn rate. How fast are munitions being used? How quickly can systems be replenished? How much transportation capacity is being redirected? How much decision-making is now being driven by supply realities instead of ideal plans? That is the level on which long wars are often decided. Now here is where Israel's situation gets harder. Israel is not fighting in a vacuum. On one side, there is the continuing Iran crisis and the broader shipping and energy disruption that has come with it. On another, there is Hezbollah, which Reuters reported has taken major losses but is still fighting, still shaping events in Lebanon, and still trying to remain relevant in the larger US-Iran confrontation. Israeli operations in southern Lebanon are ongoing enough that the Israeli military has issued evacuation notices to residents there, citing renewed operations after Hezbollah breaches of the ceasefire. That means Israel is not dealing with one simple logistics challenge. It is dealing with layered military demand, frontline demand, air defense demand, reserve demand, cross-border demand, political demand, and all of this inside a regional environment where global shipping lanes are already under stress. That is why the collapse narrative gets the facts wrong but stumbles near a real fear. The real fear is not that the IDF instantly falls apart. The real fear is that Israel gets pulled deeper into a war of accumulation. Accumulation of cost, accumulation of deployments, accumulation of supply burden, accumulation of fronts, accumulation of things that are manageable on day 3, manageable on day 10, manageable on day 20, but become much harder to manage when they all keep stacking on top of each other. That is what military strain actually looks like. Now look at the maritime picture. Reuters reported just days ago that Iran said it would respond with long and painful strikes on U.S. positions if Washington renewed attacks, while restating its claim over the Strait of Hormuz. Reuters has also reported that the war's disruptions are delaying humanitarian and commercial flows far beyond the Middle East, including worsening food crises elsewhere because shipping has become slower, more costly, and less predictable. That matters because even when a state like Israel is not importing frontline ammunition the way a weaker country might, the wider supply ecosystem still matters. Fuel markets matter, commercial shipping patterns matter, air routes matter, insurance costs matter, civilian economic stability matters, industrial confidence matters. An army does not operate above the economy, it operates inside it. And once a war begins distorting the economy around the army, the The real burden grows in ways that are less visible, but no less dangerous. This is where the official narrative can get misleading. If Israeli leaders say the enemy has been degraded, that may be partly true. If US leaders say Iran has taken major losses, that may be partly true too. But Reuters also reported that Iran says it is replenishing missile and drone launchers at a higher rate than before the war. Whether one accepts that claim fully or not, the fact that Tehran is projecting continued regeneration tells you the conflict is not behaving like a clean one-sided breakdown. It is behaving like a hard adaptive war in which both sides are still trying to prove they can outlast the other. And that is the key word here, outlast. Because once outlasting becomes the frame, logistics becomes destiny. Now imagine being an Israeli planner right now. You have to sustain readiness against Hezbollah. You have to monitor Iran and any broader regional escalation. You have to protect population centers. You have to sustain operational tempo. You have to reassure allies. You have to keep the home front functional. And you have to do it while the wider region is dealing with shipping disruption, energy volatility, and a ceasefire that looks increasingly fragile rather than final. That does not mean collapse. It means compression, a narrowing margin, a situation where every additional burden matters more than the last one. And this is why the Lebanon front is so important. Hezbollah has paid a steep price, according to Reuters, with thousands of fighters lost, and major political pressure building against it inside Lebanon, but it has not disappeared. It is still active enough to matter militarily and politically, and Israel is still active enough in response that southern Lebanon residents are being warned to evacuate amid operations. That is not the profile of a front that has been solved. That is the profile of a front that continues to consume attention, munitions, and strategic bandwidth. And in war, bandwidth is everything. Not just the ability to fight, but the ability to decide. Because commanders under strain do not only worry about what they want to do, they worry about what they can still afford to do, what they can sustain, what they can defend afterward, what they can replenish if the war suddenly widens again. That is how logistics quietly enters the center of strategy. Now here's the contradiction that no government likes to talk about publicly. The attacker often has a simpler job. The defender has to cover more. Cover cities, cover bases, cover infrastructure, cover supply lines, cover shipping, cover deterrence, cover public morale. Iran and its allies do not need to destroy all of those things to create effect. They only need to keep enough of them under pressure that Israel keeps paying a premium to remain secure. That is why this kind of war can get so expensive so fast. And it is also why viral claims about starvation and collapse in 5 days miss the real danger by trying to sensationalize it. The real danger is slower, more structural, more believable, and in some ways more worrying. It is the danger that a state keeps functioning, keeps fighting, keeps projecting strength, but under a steadily rising logistics burden that makes every month harder than the last. Now bring the US into this. Washington is deeply tied to this conflict, and Reuters reporting shows that the military, economic, and diplomatic clocks are all running at once. Peace talks have stalled. Hormuz remains constrained. Oil prices have reacted. Iran is still threatening retaliation. And the broader regional environment is still unstable enough that the world keeps responding as if escalation risk remains real, because it does. That matters to Israel because US support does not erase logistics strain. It helps manage it. It offsets it, it reinforces it, but it does not magically end the underlying arithmetic of a long war. And long wars are arithmetic. How much can be moved? How fast can it be moved? How much can be replaced? How many systems can be sustained at once? How many active fronts can be managed before the cost curve starts turning against you? That is the battlefield beneath the battlefield. So, is Israel's army collapsing in 5 days? No reliable reporting supports that. But is Israel under real military and logistical pressure in a war that is increasingly defined by endurance and system strain? Yes, absolutely. And that is what makes this story important. Because collapse stories are easy, real strain stories are harder. They require more patience, more context, more honesty. But they are often closer to the truth. The truth is that Iran and its allies appear to be trying to keep Israel, the United States, and the wider region trapped inside a costly, drawn-out pressure environment. The truth is that shipping disruption and stalled diplomacy are making the wider war harder to contain. The truth is that Hezbollah may be weakened, but is still strong enough to keep forcing choices on Israel. And the truth is that in wars like this, the side that looks stable from far away can still be absorbing more strain than most people understand. That is the real warning here. Not instant starvation, not a 5-day collapse, not a dramatic ending by next week, but a longer, harsher contest in which logistics, resupply, and strategic endurance may decide more than any single strike ever could. So the question is not whether Israel suddenly falls. The question is whether this war is becoming the kind of conflict where even strong militaries start paying a heavier price just to keep doing what they were already doing yesterday. Because if that is where this is heading, then the next phase of the war will not be decided only by rockets, drones, or headlines. It will be decided by something colder, something slower, something much harder to see on television. Which side can still keep the machine running when everything around it is designed to wear that machine down? And if you ask me, that is a far more serious story than any fake collapse headline. Because that story does not need exaggeration to be dangerous. It already is.